Hi, I'm Lhadon,
And I'm Tendor.
and this is the first episode of Our Nation, news and analysis on the state of Tibet. We're going to try to do this broadcast daily. It's our goal to provide a space where there can be not just news, but sort of analysis and discussion about what's happening inside Tibet as we approach the 50th anniversary of the Tibetan Uprising of 1959. March 10th, 1959 was when Tibetans took to the streets of the capital city in Lhasa, Tibet, and that led to an incredible showdown with Chinese forces, the escape of the Dalai Lama and the Tibetan government into exile in India, and 50 years now of Chinese occupation. So we'll just get going right away with a story out of Tibet this morning. In Chamdo, in Tibet, there are many monks who've been arrested, who've been beaten, and there's also an abbot of a monastery there. How do you say the name?
Denchokor Monastery.
They are, I guess what happened was there was protests there by locals and by monks from the monastery because earlier in January, because people did not want to send a local dance troupe to Lhasa, to the capital city, for the March 28th Surf Emancipation Day. That's a national holiday that's been declared by Beijing. It's new, and it's to celebrate the liberation of the Tibetan serfs, or slaves, they say. This is their way of trying to respond to the attention and the global media, public and government attention that's going to be on this March 10th, as many people are, very concerned about the crackdown inside Tibet and discussing 50 years in exile and what this means for the Tibetan nation, for His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and of course for the people still suffering inside Tibet. So that's the news out of Tibet. Again, we're completely inspired and encouraged by the bravery of those Tibetans inside in Chamdo, and all over. We keep hearing these stories of Tibetans taking, protesting and taking incredible risks in spite of the overwhelming climate of fear that exists there, to stand up for themselves, to declare, their opposition to China's occupation of Tibet and their policies in Tibet. So that's incredible news for us.
And we'll come back to that in one of our later episodes. And the other big kind of momentum that's gaining ground inside Tibet is the No Losar movement. And it sort of started, totally organically and somewhat spontaneously, but at the same time there also seems to be a level of organization. And we have heard that inside Tibet now, in many places, lots of Tibetans are talking about not celebrating Losar this year because in 2008 many Tibetans, hundreds, and some are saying thousands of Tibetans lost their lives because of Chinese government's crackdown on protests and demonstrations. So for example, in one place called the Ngaba County, we have been hearing that there are posters going up, and these posters are encouraging Tibetans to not celebrate Losar this year, to refrain from any kind of festivities, singing, dancing. And the text of one of these posters is in Tibetan. Sheru jikbe chusum phuri punda serga phomo nambaso ngejagi topshu chikdu kene zenju chebe timlu dila gomagur chusum ki lagdang chikdu tene kidu nyamdu kurgu shoga sumne sebe serga phomo thenam ranki tojab ki chedu shiwa maimbar ngeja khangjembe rawang thang thangdeng ki chedu yimba ngeja ki jemi rung thechir thalo losar yang chemi rung rang phimishi yinchin losar tene chemi nye rangni lama thang lenzum chungna dötam pyo rangni la rawang yona dötam döna losar yang legu shikdu samne gaji gi römi rung bunda tso pamashum.
And I'll read it now in English. It says, "To the Tibetans of the 3 provinces, monks, nuns, laymen, and women, let us unite our strength and let us not surrender to this invasive system of oppression. Let us hold our hands across all 3 provinces and share our joys and sorrows. We must never forget that those killed did not die fighting for their own interests. They died fighting for our just and noble cause and for the freedom of the land of snows. For that matter, we must not celebrate Losar this year. So long as you are Tibetan, you must not celebrate this Losar. Do you want to be reunited with your guru? Do you want Tibet to be free? If yes, then you should cancel Losar celebrations as a political act. Dear brothers and sisters, do not despair. It's really amazing for us to we've been hearing word about what's happening inside, and that Tibetans are organizing, and that people are all across the 3 provinces have been, talking about and pushing for this No Losar celebration campaign. But this really takes it to a whole other level.
And in fact, it has pushed all of the exiled Tibetan communities to express solidarity and to be united with our people inside Tibet. And in fact, we are in New York, and the New York community has canceled the Losar celebrations here, like many other communities all over the world. And so many Tibetans in exile are very, very conscious and aware of this movement.
And I think for us, it's just, if you, right now, the situation inside Tibet is so dark, and the Chinese have the ultimate power of violence, and, they're really, there's troops everywhere. We understand even the smallest villages, especially in eastern Tibet, they've moved in, 100, 200, 300, 500 troops for tiny populations based on what happened last year and their fear of more trouble this year. So there's a whole sort of discussion. There's a story that's been told by the media and even by us, that is, of Tibetans rising up last year in the lead up to the Olympics, then being, the crackdown coming down on their heads, and that resistance sort of being crushed. And now it's just all about this military rule in Tibet and the climate of fear. But I think the bigger story, and the one that really is moving us, and one of the reasons why we wanted to do this show, is the story of this new resistance. We've entered an era, a new era of resistance for the Tibetan struggle. And this is one that, against all odds, not only continues on, but gathers strength, gathers steam, is more united, is more clear.
More creative.
The risk, the way that this No Losar movement is being sort of organized, but without any one leader, but with many leaders, or everybody doing their part, it's so hard for the Chinese government to control this kind of resistance. How do you stop people from not celebrating a Tibetan traditional, cultural event? Of course, and religious event. Of course, people, they're trying to force Tibetans to celebrate. They're trying to bribe people. But in the end, they don't have control over this one. And it really is, it's an incredible development in our freedom movement. And not, of course, without costs, and we recognize that. And it's our job to publicize and to get the word out and to pressure for change on the ground, and for prisoners to be released, and for, for the repression to stop. But even in just, going a little beyond that and looking what's being done inside.
And continuing on, onward up until March 10th, in the coming days, as we hear more from inside Tibet and, many places about Tibetan activism, Tibetan resistance, Tibetan, Chinese government's oppression on Tibetan people. So we'll try to, continue to bring these information, news, and try to analyze, break it down, and at the same time have some kind of discussion. And it's not like a TV style discussion or anything. It's totally informal,
as you can tell by the boxes in the background. And
in fact, this is exactly where Lhadon usually sits. This is her desk, so it's sort of like a fireside, desk side chat. And we'll continue to talk with you. At the same time, if you hear anything, if there's news pieces you want to share with us, feel free to send us an email. It's easy, Tendor, Lhadon, and Students for a Free Tibet.
Great, so that's it for now. That's our news and analysis on the state of Tibet, and we'll be back tomorrow with more.